Welcome to the Echo Lab, the place where music's best-kept secrets come to light. In every episode, we uncover the overlooked legends, the underground classics, and the hidden influences that shape the soundtrack of generations. From cult bands and iconic session players to the untold stories behind timeless tracks. If you're a fan of deep cuts and deep dives, you're in the right place. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so you never miss a beat. Let's get into the story behind the sound. Ozzy Osbourne, the man behind the Prince of Darkness. Part 1. From Birmingham to Blizzard, the rise, fall, and reinvention of a legend. All right, let's set the scene. A boy named John Michael Osbourne is born on December 3rd, 1948, in Aston, a gritty, working-class neighborhood in Birmingham, England. The kind of place where everything's covered in soot, the factories never sleep, and dreams aren't exactly passed out with your morning tea. People here worked hard, drank harder, and didn't expect life to cut them any breaks. Ozzy grew up the fourth of 6 kids in a small 2-bedroom house. Picture it, 6 kids, 2 parents, and barely enough room to breathe. His dad, Jack, worked night shifts at a car factory, and his mom, Lillian, held things together at a parts plant and at home. There wasn't much money, there wasn't much anything, really, but there was music. The Beatles, mostly. And for young Ozzy, that sounds a revelation. He wasn't trying to be a frontman or a legend. He was just trying to survive school, which he hated, and get by in a world that didn't seem built for a kid like him. By his own admission, Ozzy wasn't exactly a model student. He struggled with dyslexia, though nobody called it that back then. He was a class clown, the oddball, the kid who'd rather make people laugh than study math. And that reputation stuck. He was bullied, beaten up, made fun of, and he carried that weight with him for years. It was music that gave him something to hold on to, something that felt like it belonged to him. He took odd jobs, a plumber's apprentice, a horn tuner in a car factory, even a butcher's assistant, but nothing fit. In fact, he only lasted 2 weeks at that butcher shop because he couldn't handle the smell of raw meat. Then at 17, he was arrested for burglary, tried stealing a TV, some clothes, and, hilariously, a handful of T-shirts. He did a short stint in prison when his dad refused to pay the fine. It wasn't just about teaching him a lesson. Jack wanted him to toughen up. Now, that might have been rock bottom for a lot of people, but for Ozzy, that was the beginning of everything. He got out, got his head straight, at least straighter, and started chasing something else. Something loud, something wild, something real. And that's when music went from being an escape to being a mission. So here's the part where everything shifts. Late 1960s Birmingham was a pressure cooker of industrial noise, working class angst, and young guys trying to break out of the gray. And in that world, a little band called Earth started to take shape. That's right, before they were Black Sabbath, they were Earth. Ozzy joined up with a local guitarist named Tony Iommi, a bassist named Geezer Butler, and a drummer named Bill Ward. And they weren't polished. They weren't cute. They weren't trying to be pop stars. This was dark, raw, and weirdly heavy for its time. Inspired by horror movies, blues riffs, and doom and gloom reality, they leaned into something that didn't even have a name yet. What they created was the foundation of heavy metal. And Ozzy, he wasn't your typical frontman. He didn't hit high notes like Robert Plant or command the stage like Mick Jagger. But he had this voice, this eerie, almost unhinged wail, and when you paired that with Iommi's thunderous riffs, it was like lightning in a bottle. You couldn't look away. In 1970, they dropped their first self-titled album, Black Sabbath, released on a Friday the 13th, with a rain-soaked cover and a title track that felt like the musical equivalent of summoning a demon. Critics didn't get it. They actually hated it. But the fans? They heard something different, something honest, something massive. Then came Paranoid later that same year. That's the one that really cracked things open. War Pigs, Iron Man, Paranoid. Those songs weren't just hits. They became metal blueprints. Ozzy's voice was everywhere, and suddenly, the weird kid from Birmingham was leading a revolution. But here's the thing. Success didn't make them stable. Far from it. The band dove headfirst into the chaos. Drugs, booze, and endless touring took their toll. And for Ozzy, who never did anything halfway, it was a slippery slope. By the mid-'70s, Sabbath was still putting out albums, Master of Reality, Volume 4, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, but the cracks were showing. Ozzy was spiraling. He was unpredictable, often unreliable, and totally consumed by addiction. And eventually, it all caught up with him. In 1979, the band finally said enough. Ozzy was fired from Black Sabbath, the band he'd helped create, and just like that, he was out. For most people, that would have been the end of the story. But for Ozzy Osbourne, that was just Act 2 warming up. So, 1979, Ozzy's out of Sabbath. He's holed up in a hotel room in L.A., drowning in booze and self-pity. His marriage is falling apart, his band is gone, and he's convinced his career is over. And honestly, everyone else thinks so too. The music industry is exactly lining up to take a chance on a guy known more for chaos and consistency. But this is where Sharon comes in. Sharon Arden, the daughter of music mogul Don Arden, sees something in Ozzy that no one else does. Where others see a burnout, she sees raw, untamed power. She decides she's going to manage him, clean him up, build a band around him, and give him another shot. That decision, it changed everything. The first move was recruiting a young, virtually unknown guitarist named Randy Rhoads. And look, if you've never heard Randy Rhoads play, stop what you're doing and go listen to Crazy Train. The guy was a prodigy. Classical technique, flawless tone, and he had this spark that lit a fire under Ozzy. The two clicked instantly. In 1980, Ozzy's solo debut Blizzard of Oz dropped, and it was like a bomb went off. Crazy Train became an anthem overnight. Mr. Crowley dripped with eerie organ and guitar theatrics. And suddenly, the guy everyone had written off was on top of the world again. Ozzy wasn't just surviving, he was reinventing himself. Gone was the sluggish, doom-laden Sabbath frontman. Now he was this wild, unpredictable showman with a bat-biting reputation and a full-blown solo career. The Blizzard of Oz tour was massive. Fans loved it. The press couldn't get enough of it. Ozzy was back, and bigger than ever. But the high didn't last. In 1982, while on tour in Florida, tragedy struck. Randy Rhoads, just 25 years old, was killed in a freak plane accident. He was gone in an instant, and it shattered Ozzy. Randy wasn't just a guitarist. He was Ozzy's creative lifeline, his friend, and arguably the best musical partner he'd ever had. Ozzy spiraled again. The drinking, the drugs, the grief. It was almost too much. But somehow, he kept going. After Randy's death, everything could have fallen apart again. And for a while, it did. Ozzy was gutted. He canceled shows. He drank even more. And there were nights when people genuinely didn't know if he'd make it. But the thing about Ozzy, he's stubborn. He's chaotic, sure. Self-destructive, definitely. But he's also a survivor. And that instinct to keep going, it kicked in. He brought in guitarist Brad Gillis to help finish the diary of a Madman tour. It wasn't easy. Fans were mourning Randy too, but Ozzy got back on stage. And when the tour wrapped, he took a breath and started rebuilding again. In 1983, he found his next long-term guitar partner in Jake E. Lee, a flashy, technical player with an edge. Together, they made Bark at the Moon, an album that didn't just prove Ozzy could still make great music. It showed he could evolve. The title track was a hit. The videos were pure 80s metal theater. And Ozzy was, once again, firmly planted in the spotlight. But the chaos never really stopped. Throughout the 80s, Ozzy's career was a roller coaster. There were high points, like the Ultimate Sin album with its glam metal sheen and the hit shot In the Dark. But there were also arrests, public outbursts, and endless stories of excess, like the time he bit the head off a dove in a record exec's office, or the now legendary moment when he bit the head off a bat on stage, thinking it was rubber and had to get rabies shots. Ozzy had become more than a rock star. He was a myth. He was a prince of darkness. The wild man. The guy your parents warned you about. And yet, beneath all the headlines, he was still just. Ozzy, a guy who loved music, loved his fans, and was trying, in his own chaotic way, to keep it together. By the late 80s, Ozzy teamed up with guitarist Zakk Wylde, a young, southern-fried shredder with monster tone and energy to burn. Their chemistry was instant. Albums like No Rest for the Wicked and No More Tears took Ozzy into the 90s with a fresh sound and massive success. No More Tears, in particular, became one of his biggest hits. It was melodic, dark, epic, and Zakk's guitar work, combined with Ozzy's haunting vocal, made it unforgettable. The 1990s also saw a softer side of Ozzy peek through. He talked openly about his struggles with addiction. He tried, really tried, to clean up, and with Sharon by his side, he started to get more grounded. He even announced a farewell tour in 1992. Of course, farewell didn't mean what it used to. Ozzy would go on a tour for decades after. But that moment felt like a turning point. A pause. A chance to look back and acknowledge just how far he'd come. From Birmingham kid to Sabbath icon. From washed-up ex-frontman to solo legend. Ozzy had done the unthinkable. He survived. Thanks for hanging out with the Echo Lab. Whether you're listening on your favorite podcast app or watching on YouTube, we appreciate you being here. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow, subscribe, and drop a review or comment to let us know what you think. Got a band, topic, or a deep cut you want featured? Shoot us a message. Until next time, this is the Echo Lab, where we dive into the story behind the sound.